Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadcha Akanda Rupa Stitir Eva Moksho Brahma Vitye Shrutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings in the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. The Gunas of Prakriti and the Vrittis of Yoga is the interesting subject that we've brought up for this class series. We're in our third and final class of that series. Last 2 Sundays we've looked at such wonderful teachings as inspired by Sri Ramakrishna's analogy of the hot air balloon rising and having to cut off the sandbags of dead weights, that our mind, of course, being that balloon, and the weights being various things that people burden themselves with in their lives that are, according to most the seers, and that most of them are unnecessary. Probably you ought to save all that energy expended on trying to cut off unnecessary things by storing it up for higher philosophical understanding that you're going to have to engender and attain in order to understand such enigmatic subjects as the 3 gunas of tamas, rajas, and sattva. Is lethargy and restless energy and balance, and the various kinds of thoughts that invade the head day to day, as we were talking about today in our drive over. Is that basically Vivekananda's teachings, if he comes down a few rungs of the Advaitic ladder to teach us, who are those of us who are not raised in the Dharma, then he's using a lot of teachings about the willpower of a human being. And if you can just learn the precepts and keep true to them, yamas and yamas, and don't transgress those, then you can go about fulfilling yourself in the world. Your desires can reach an end, and you'll have probably one great desire to attain. Could be family, could be higher position in occupation, could be a vast amount of wealth. All of those things actually are mentioned as being okay by beings like Krishna and the Gita. As compared to what we looked at last week, that they're diseases in the hospital of the world on that new chart that was put up, if they're done with negative mindset. So in order to fulfill your desires in the right and straightforward way, then you'd probably want to know that thoughts arise from the mind, and even here at the gross level of consciousness, they turn into objects. Thought is father to the deed, and all of those need objects to have doings amidst things of matter. So people then will need to know that if they follow that mind-only school philosophy in India, and they understand it, because admittedly most people don't go around and see things and say, oh, those are the thoughts of my mind, not really making that connection or thinking that deeply about it. But if that is the truth about projection of the mind, sankalpa and vikalpa, these Sanskrit terms, then it would also be true that any thought that was errant or skewed or in opposition to balance would be something that you'd want to completely annihilate from your daily thinking process. Like I was told by my mentor early on, you just search your mind for anything of a negative kind, which Patanjali is calling klista, or pain-bearing thoughts. And your sadhana for now will be just to make sure those never rise up in the mind again. Don't water those weeds, just water the flowers of what you're seeking in a dharmic way. So that would be a kind of effort that you put forth, knowing that if you get up in the morning and say, I don't think I can attain that position, and that's already putting yourself behind the 8 ball, as they say. Or if you get up and saying, I'm weak, or I'm worthless, or any other kind of pain-bearing thought comes along, acts as an impediment to fulfilling your desires, then enlightenment's going to be even further away from the quotient. What to speak of peace of mind, which Holy Mother has told us that we need first and foremost. If we were able to go about all the activities in life that have to do with commerce and relations with people, that if we could just have peace of mind, unruffled, and continual, constant, then that would be enough. That would almost replace the strong will of a person, whose strong will may get them in trouble at some point. And the Gita and other great scriptures are full of such teachings. Like the asuric or negative mind says one day, that I have attained yesterday, and this I will attain tomorrow. And it gets into a kind of routine or rut about that. And then you get into that satiation never comes. To quote my teacher, he used to give a talk once a year saying, satiation never comes. So he was speaking to the American people who were involved. None of them were monastic like he was. They were his students. They were interested in Vedanta and the higher truths. And probably all of them existing at different levels of understanding, or maybe even lack thereof for new people. That this seeking after things and trying to satisfy your things was not only impeded by things like Gunas and Vrittis and karmas and samskaras, which the teachings of which you get from Vedanta, but also was not possible anyway, even if it weren't impeded by those. If you just had a smooth path and you say you got everything in life, like some people do, then still you would find out a dissatisfaction at the end of your life, your seeking. So that's why people, and we've seen it even here in America and in the West, kind of perk up when they hear truth, because it's not spoken very often in family circles or even in churches, conventional churches. You hear moral teachings, but this thing we call dharma, or what we call atmagyan, true knowledge of the true self, not the ego self, which is involved in that round of gaining and losing over birth and death, many births and deaths, they say. It's not going to fulfill them, so then there has to be something that's going to inspire them. So today we'll look at that in terms of higher Saatva. That's what we're heading for as our penultimate teaching here in this 3-class series. Everything's been leading up to that. And it's enough to know then if we know the characteristics of tamas, rajas, and mixed Saatva, because Shankara, you'll find out when we get into this class, he's giving Saatva a pretty high station, higher than most teachers do. And when he calls it mixed Saatva, such things as disinterest in the world and the loss of prideful behavior and inhibiting thoughts are already pretty much gone. So people are living in a sattvic state. He calls that mixed Saatva, but he wants to make a point that there's a higher level of Saatva as you climb the mountain. So we'll look at that chart and this chart of how to climb the high level of Saatva and what happens when you do. And this class we want to bring in with the Gunas of Prakriti, which are those 3 modes. We call them modes. You could call them moods if they enter into your mind, but as long as they're out there in nature, great upheavals and stagnant swamps and high flights of hot air balloons. I mean, whatever you're going to look at it as, you see that those are in nature, but then they translate into the mind. And we had that color-coded chart last week. Actually, the last 2 weeks we showed half of each of that to show the black, brown, red, yellow, pale, and white colors of the 3 gunas as they're mixed together. And to try and give an idea of how thoughts are influenced naturally by what the soul is encountering in nature, from the cradle to the grave. I hear my teacher right now echoing in my mind. It says, from cradle to the grave, man is involved in that kind of bondage. So to waken up out of that means you'd get this inspiring level, and that's probably only going to happen in any way that sticks, because I've been using lately, snow doesn't stick to a wet ground. One of Sri Ramakrishna's stories, it's very apropos. You'll have to get dry ground for that to build into a nice snowbank. So all these things you're doing in life will just melt on that wet road of lower gunas, roads with lower gunas on it. But if you dry it out with wisdom, under the sun of wisdom, and then the snow falls, the Dharma, the white teachings, the white Saatva teachings fall on the ground of the mind, and you're getting this accumulation of snowbanks of wisdom, like some of these seers have. You give me another snow cone? Sure, here's another one, here's another. What flavor this time? Make it vanilla. Let's see. I won't settle for anything less than lemon. Let's see. So you want to have the higher color of Saatva all the time in your mind. So the march to higher Saatva and the attaining of ground and the holding of ground is what becomes the problem there, rather than what? Lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, and a desire for fame, shame, greed, pride of caste, pride of lineage. They're called the 6 fetters, the 6 passions and the 8 fetters. Keep those at a minimum. They're in the mind. They're in all minds, even the collective mind, and probably even in the great mind in seed potential. But the great mind has a very strong atmosphere and nature of higher Saatva. That would be even beyond the heaven-seeking senses, beyond the ancestors, beyond the gods, and gods even would be this Brahma Loka. We have to put it in Sanskrit at this point, the realm of the Trinity, which people do use as a goal who are seeking to be beyond lower heavens, probably even beyond higher heavens if you're saying those are the devas and devis, like Indra and his gods. And beyond that, then you would find this radiant land of pure Saatva, which the Trinity extracts from in order to produce all the worlds. And naturally, Gunas are going to be ready to enter into that at all levels. And people with Vrittis or thoughts are going to be ready too. And it's just a matter of whether those Gunas are transcended or on your side, if you get your mind on your side, and also if your thoughts are kept even, in equilibrium, in yoga. Because falling into negative thoughts, klista vrittis, is immediately falling out of yoga. So if you just use that as a simple truth, you say, well, I'll stay in a klista vritti, I'll just keep my mind positive all the time. Some people actually master that. And it may not seem like all that much compared to enlightenment to stay in pure sattva, but the whole thing manifests itself over time. If you can stay in that, you take a vow for it, vrata, that, and make an examination of your mind day and night. At meditation is a good time to do that, as you enter into it. And contemplating the teachings like we're doing here today in groups, like we did yesterday with the group of some 16 people, all keeping your mind on that Dharma teaching. It's just a natural way of drying out the road so that the snow will stick, these teachings will stick. And then those teachings will help you adhere to a pure sattvic state. You'll see when we look at some of them individually to help convince the mind that, yes, that's the road to go, the dry road, the sunlit path. And the sattva guna is going to be my default. So I'm not going to fall any lower than that anymore. There's no need for this negativity nor old lazy habits and things that just open the door to Maya and its evolutes. Lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride. And a whole bunch of cosmic elephants. A whole bunch of cosmic evolutes too. In fact, if an elephant comes in at all, you should say, Om Namah Ganeshaya. You know, make sure that he's in charge of your thinking process. So everything is auspicious. So that was what I was thinking before class to relate. And we'll also today see what the results of studying Gunas and Vrittis. Vrittis of yoga, that is. So Patanjali is the one that's really, over time now, has come together with his eight-limb system that really has a very deep inner core, a middle core to it about thought. As if, you know, he wants to bring out to people of this time, because 140 AD, roughly, when he put together, in one of his lifetimes, put together the eight-limbed yoga, was fairly recent, is fairly recent for India. I often mention that hundreds of years go by and they're just ticks of a kind of collective mind or cosmic mind clock. And the witness who knows they're birthless and deathless is seeing the gears of this clock turn. And doesn't fall into the misconception that the soul is born and lives for a short time and then dies and then gets reborn. It's looking at this as just one of the gears of that clock, and it's the witness of it. Like studying the Annapurna Upanishad, that we will be doing in about 2 or 3 weeks now when we go to Portland, Oregon, and our ashram there has right off the top in the first of 5 padas, first of 5 sections, you know, finding the sadhana is done, the vision of Annapurna has been received, and when she disappears after that, all the truth comes rushing in. So the vision of a great being like that, is that it? So, oh, I did it. No, it's what happens after that vision leaves. That's the great thing. It's put very nicely in that Upanishad. So usually people are thinking, oh, I got the vision, I'm free. But the great being said, ask me a boon. You asked the boon, and then she said, so be it, and disappeared. There's like a 3-word conversation with her. And you're thinking, now what? And there, all the delusions of the mind go away as soon as she disappears. As soon as the Mother of Wisdom makes her appearance, That's the signal that you've done all your sadhana up to that point. You're ready. That's the moment. And you can't stop that moment and hold her in a form. It's very beautiful is the way it's put in these, what we're calling now the Mother Upanishads. 6 or 7 of them. And there's probably a couple more back there that could be named that too, like the Sita Upanishad and Kundalini Yoga Upanishad and so forth. So that's a very important thing that strikes you right off the bat, is that what's left over after the vision has gained is the mind losing delusion. It was there before she came. You were attenuating yourself, but after she appeared, it's gone forever. That is, after she appeared and disappeared in form, it's gone forever. The 5 main kinds of delusion. It's a beautiful teaching right there in the first section of the Annapurna Upanishad that I made a chart on that night. You know, as soon as I read it, there it is. So I'll show that at the Wynwood retreat. We'll talk about that. But it has to do with the mind reaching the sattvic state and keeping it. Saying, this is my default zone. So I'm accenting this today so that we can't fall any lower than that. If you begin to fall any lower than that, any old habits creep in, or the world throws you curves and so forth, and you say, my teacher told me that this is as low as I can go. It's already high. It's already a high rung of the ladder, but I relinquish it. I heard that word today, a nice word, relinquish. It could be renounce, it could be detach, it could be dispassion, but how about just relinquish it and let it go and don't hold it anymore. The minute it suggests itself, if you follow the reasoning of monism and so forth, that nothing is real here, then why hold it? It'd be better to hold the Aklista Vrittis, but you're not going to be holding those either after a while. They're just to get you over the Klista Vrittis, show you the other side of things. That's where tamas and rajas begin to leak away and sattva comes forward. Sattvic mind. Put it in terms of tattvas, it's it's ashuddha, then shuddha, then shuddha, and vishuddha. So things are impure, like so just mentioning a swamp or something, or a sewer. Think of things, try and find things that are impure amongst objects. They're just kind of impure by nature. Bad water or something, you see. And then think of tattvas that are shuddha, mixed. They have both good properties, negative properties in them, and that's the way they are. Then think higher to the, like we were just mentioning about the Trinity and cosmic mind. Well, that's shuddha. So it's almost like saying tamas, rajas, and sattva. So I say all this to let you know that I'm also going to introduce another triputi into Gunas and Vrittis. And that's going to be the three powers of Shakti herself. That's going to be Avarana, Vikshepa, and Prakasha. The Prakasha Shakti is what we definitely want to lean towards. So that's where it's going to be important for you to hold on to Saatva and work on higher Saatva, pure Saatva. Also adhere to, in your mind, to Shuddha, those things, the tattvas that are most pure. And also go beyond Klista and Aklista Vrittis to no thought. It's kind of funny to think about that. Well, just a minute, what are you going to do now? I have to go somewhere and stop thinking. I'll be right back. Ever heard anyone say that? What are you doing? I'm practicing non-thinking right now, leave me alone. Well, you could say that that's meditation, but meditation quite often doesn't achieve that. But if you thought of it as a practice, there's karma, and there's vikarma, and there's akarma. All these triputis we talk about, that you should probably be leaning toward that third gate in every one of them. And just noticing the other two slip by, or knowing that they're a part of a mixed or negative tattva or thought. And so that you really are practicing the whole time being the witness of them, the penultimate station consciousness, Sakshi Bhutam, the one who witnesses all those things and doesn't partake of them, like being at a feast, you know, and just watching people eat. And that must be good, you see. Oh, I smell it. And you're just vicariously enjoying through other people, like probably what the Lord does through all the senses, Krishna says. All the beings that he mentions in the Gita, he's the great enjoyer inside of all the senses. He's the Lord of gods. And so, you know, Hrishikesha and so forth, you know, everyone's enjoying through all the senses, but all the enjoyment's really going to the source, back to the source. Come to find out, so is all the suffering. They're taking on all the suffering as well as all the enjoyment. And Adi Buddha, Adi Yagya, Adi Daiva, Adi Atman, and so forth. Those teachings are very beautiful. So watch then for evidence of the three Shaktis coming into these teachings today as we finish up with a few of these charts. Let's look first at Shankara's own rendition. Like I said, he puts it at a very high level when he talks about Saatva. Mixed Saatva is already something that most people are still trying to attain. If you see across the board, you'll see that that's the case. But start at the bottom of this chart. I'm glad I found this image, because you're fencing with these three gunas all the time. And you need to be an expert swordsman. And remember what Sri Ramakrishna said, the expert swordsman uses two swords. I think there's one of our God blogs on that, on our wisdom website for SRV. So one of knowledge, one of action. I think that can even be explained by, oh really, he's got two swords, is he going to hurt himself? It's more likely to hurt himself with those two swords than just mastering one. Well, yes, that's true if he starts out with action and then picks up the second sword of knowledge later. Isn't that what most of us do this day and age? We'll act, throw ourselves into it, later we'll consider. It's called 20/20 hindsight or something like that. And no foresight, you see. So it's not really sight at all. It's kind of a blindness that people are walking around with their eyes wide open, but completely blind. That's a song. That's a line out of a song in India. Oh mind, you're walking around with your eyes wide open, but you remain completely blind. So, in that case then, pick up that sword of knowledge first. Where do you get it from? Your parents. Where do you get them from? Dharmic realms. And where do they get it from? Lifetimes of having listened to gurus and read scriptures. If you follow that track, then you're parting company with a greater percentage of embodied souls, aren't you? To find something as precious as the Dharma. So look for those people in this lifetime that are your Sangha, because they may be your parents next lifetime. It's not so simple as to say a duck may be somebody's mother, kind of. But because animals have their own incarnations inside of their own realm, birds and beasts of the field. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, but we don't have any place to lay our head here. So those people that you're associating with that are part of your Sangha, close in and widespread, like the Ramakrishna order, you want to commune with them deeply, understand them at a very deep level, love them, as Jesus said. And because those beings you're going to incarnate with until you get free from either the habit of incarnation, like the habit of rebirth, our father of yoga talks about, or just a natural transcendence of it, or maybe coming back to help others under the auspice of a great soul like the goddess Annapurna, the Divine Mother, who feeds all. This is Som, one of her beautiful bijams. She's got a 27 bija mantra for her, which you'll all learn at Wynwood. And it's got all the other bijams that we know about contained in it. So this basically is feeding all beings, Annapurna, but it means definitely they make a distinction. It's not just food we're talking about when we say feed. We're getting fed the teachings, basically. Our mind is hungry for the teachings, and that has to be satisfied. And we get the highest amount of sustenance out of that. And because body and food, they can befriend themselves. They have a small role in the whole thing. Because otherwise the gunas will be very low in the body. Bad digestion. Your thoughts will be thinking about your digestion all the time. Have you seen people like that? Chronically ill. And they're always thinking about their body, always having to run to doctors. And people are saying, well, let's change your food up a little bit here, and try and change the food of your mind too. You see, it's not usually a healing modality that the medical institution is that interested in. They'd rather shoot you something quick, or give you a pill, or some chemical they think is some sort of magic from nature. But the real holistic healers, they know this has to do with prana and energy. See, and your prana has the 3 gunas running through it too then, right? And your prana also controls your thoughts, doesn't it? So you see the whole thing is just intrinsically connected at not just a very deep level, but a basic level. Gross, subtle, causal level, the 3 worlds. And all levels of consciousness and all beings that are under the influence of those levels of consciousness are also included in that whole play, sport of consciousness. At the bottom here then, we'll immediately introduce you to Avarana Shakti. That's the power of obscuration. Now it's Shankara, more than anyone that we can see, at least in the scriptures, that has made this connection of the 3 gunas to the 3 Shaktis, the 3 powers of Shakti. You don't usually hear that. You didn't hear it in Lord Kapil's system when he brought, there are 3 gunas, about all he says. Of course, we've lost lots of his scriptures, Sankhya scriptures, because they're so ancient. But the 3 gunas got their first message, as far as we know, in written word back there in Sankhya Yoga with Lord Kapila. So, but no mention of the veiling power, the covering power, and all this. So this came about later, and through probably Tantra and Veda. But at Shankara's time, even later than Patanjali's time, about 700 AD, then all of a sudden he's making right there in the Vivekachudamani this connection. This heavy, weighty energy, of usually of the body. Guess what? It's in your mind, and in your mind it's called covering power. And there are prana shaktis, according to Kundalini Yoga, responsible for helping you slough this off. See? If you find out about them, ask their help, perpetuate them, they'll help you remove this tendency and so forth. And then you can soar like the great swan. Your hot air balloon can rise right away. So there you see, if you're under that tamas, or power of obscuration, which are called avarana shakti, then illusory appearances are in charge. Bondage is there. I'll give you just the English. You can look at the Sanskrit yourself. Dullness and ignorance impedes the mind, and false thinking, the thoughts. We'll go through it quickly because my commentaries are taking enough time on the side. So then you see the red lettering. That's where Rajas kicks in. It's good to get Rajas, because if you had Tamas, it's a whole different kettle of fish, you see. It's a whole different ballgame. If you get energy, all of a sudden you can do things. And yes, that can distract you away from the fact that you were just depressed for a week, or you had a bad year, or whatever. But Rajas is going to soon wear you out. And that kind of restlessness is known for people getting nervous breakdowns and having, to quit jobs and go into hospitals or whatever the case may be, because they weren't able to control these restless tendencies, and they gave rise to more of the same. Desires basically would come in. The tamasic person has one desire: I wish this darkness would go away. There's just nothing else in that mind but blackness. It can come through so many means and ways. You can just be naturally dull, born that way because of past lifetimes and samskaras, or you can lose a child, or you can lose all your money, or your riches that you inherited with got stolen. How many different ways can tamas just impede the mind and leave you helpless? Don't need to hang out on that thought, but just enough to say that rajas is a welcome doorway at that part for most people. And there you see the second type of Shakti, vikshepa, very much like vikshipta mind in yogas, in Patanjali's system. So it's this mind that's off and on, distorted. And but basically Shankara, being kind to it, says it is the power of projection. Projection, the word for that, sankalpa. But you know that Krishna says, if you have the tendency for sankalpa, you can't be a yogi. So you'll have to temper that sankalpa, vikalpa type of mind, because that's that mind that out of desire is projecting things and wants more of the same. And it's never satisfied, as I was just starting out this class by saying, when it gets on that wheel, it's just like a carrot before a horse. So it's just being led on, hamster wheel style. And people don't realize it when they're in it. They're veiled. That's what the veiling power does. It veils. Not a no-brainer there, you see. But you can see some of the characteristics then. It's the source of desire, as I was just saying, raga dvesha. It's constant attachment. It's mental disturbance all the time, so no peace. And it's sorrow and pain. You'd think sorrow and pain would come at tamas level. That's a dull brute level. Beings brooding, the dinosaurs, did they have sorrow and pain? They were just dull, So Rajas carries that with it. You see, is that I feel energy, and this energy is making me feel not so good or pretty good today. It's going back and forth like that. So it's very much more on the level of a prana that's already starting to move. We call it spiked prana, you see, and we want to smooth that out. The dull prana was this, valley prana. It's just like, where's the bottom? And when will it start arcing back up? Oh, there's Rajas in the future. I see a spike. Let's go for it. So that's, of course, this Rajas and Tamas round of things. See, basically, if you want to put that cosmically, it's like ancestors, humans, and animals. Those three gunas in a tempered state are there in all three of those worlds, the three worlds. And it's constantly going on in rounds. Let's get to where we really want to head, so we're moving through this quick. To get to mixed sattva. Power of revolution, that's called Prakasha Shakti, and I want to go to that chart and show you in a second. Right now, let's look at the characteristics or attributes of mixed sattva. Prakasha Shakti. It's absence of pride. Pride is called darpana, so you see adarpana there. It's beneficial denial, which is a nice way of putting it. You see, things that you want to relinquish. You say, I think I'll give that up. I'll feel much better if I do. At some point, sattva comes along and says, you'd feel better without that. Oh, really? Oh, then here, I'll relinquish it. Hey, I feel better. It's like a hot air, it's like a sandbag someone cut off for you. Niyama, spiritual practice, of course. These are all things of mixed sattva. Pratyahara, well, you know that word in Sanskrit, in yoga. It means that you're trying to take your mind off of thoughts, of objects, and then thoughts. Usually that's the way it goes. If I can renounce the object, then I can see that it still exists in my mind. And so I know where the origin of that object was. It's in my mind. And if I can get to my mind and relinquish that thought, then I'm in samadhi. Savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara. Pretty soon I can get to sasmita samadhi, which is free of the ego feeling, as Patanjali laid out the different seated samadhis, seated bija samadhis. And then Shraddha, faith, that's of course one of Vedanta's favorite treasures, or jewels. And then Bhakti, devotion. Very hard to find a Rajasic person with devotion, like a businessman, see, or someone like that. You know, where's their devotion hiding? It's pretty much been covered by, let's go get this, and I'll get that tomorrow. And I don't care, number one, where it came from, and I don't care, number two, if my getting of it causes sorrow to others, like multinational corporations and stuff. You know. So basically, that's one of the problems with losing your devotion to the source of things. And if you think nature is the source of things, then you have a devotion to something insentient. So that doesn't make sense. Mumukshutvam, desire for liberation, and a divine nature rather than a heroic nature, which might be happening as a mixture of sattvas and rajas, and a dull nature, animalistic nature, right? So they call that heroic, divine, and animalistic, the three kinds of beings. So there's another triputi that you can almost put side by side along with these other threes that weave themselves together in consciousness, and probably just are in abeyance when the gunas aren't there. As soon as a creation happens, or a thought of a creation happens by a great mind, big thought happens, boom, gunas come marching out. And beings of higher intelligence are trying to cling to that sattvic side of the creation. You'll see them always born from the realms of the gods, and always in possession of their bhakti, and in that desire for liberation all the time. So that leads to pure sattva, and that's the Maha Shakti. So if you go from Avarana Shakti to Vikshepa Shakti to Prakasha Shakti, then there's this great Mahashakti in charge of the whole thing. She's watching out for all souls, like I was just mentioning about the Annapurna Upanishad. And before we look quickly at this chart for some of its jewels, look at some of the characteristics of the Mahashakti. It's Vishuddham, and I just mentioned that a few minutes ago. It is pure. It's not having to be pure or searching for purity or even doing purification. In fact, it would be better off for the soul if they thought, what I worship is the pure, and any purification, any impurities I have will go away if I worship the pure. Because, as Swami Vivekananda just say, you know, mud can't clean mud. You've got a muddy garment, and you're washing it in muddy water. That's the way he put it. So you have to go to something that's innately pure, that you've been told by an illumined soul is pure, and bathe yourself in that purity. And that's a natural outcome of that process, is that your mind will emerge white and pure. And that's why Holy Mother has a whole bunch of teachings on that, you know, how to look at the moon, she says, and everything is so pure. You see, oh, actually there's spots in the moon. You know, maybe I should look more at the sun's rays. There's some purities there. So she had these great, deep meditations on purity. She was like a living embodiment of purity. Because you'd be singing to her something like, Om Lajaviti Prakritim Paramam Abhayam Varadam Nararupadaram Janatapaharam Sharanagata Sevaka Toshakarim Pranamami Param Jananim Jagatam Om lajjapata vritte nityam sharada jnanadaite vapebhyona sadaraksha kripamai namostute. A beautiful hymn written by one of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples, Swami Abhedananda, to Holy Mother. Lajjapata vritte nityam sharada jnanadaite daike. Beautiful Sanskrit words about this Divine Mother in modest veil, who's retiring and ever pure and fulfilling the desires of the devotees. So that's what your mind is courting and coveting now, is that higher purity that comes with true sattva of an unmixed kind. And that takes the minds of the devotees and transports them, as our founder Lexix used to say, just transports them into a higher frame of mind. Like she said once, I took some buds of jasmine and rangam and put them in a bowl, put water in it. They started to flower. I put a string through them, made a garland out of them, took them to the Kali temple, put it around Mother Kali's neck. Sri Ramakrishna walked in and saw that and went into samadhi. Gone. To see the beauty of her form enhanced by those flowers and that fragrance of jasmine and rangam. So, will a rajasic person walk into a temple and go into samadhi? Or a tamasic person probably go there, if anything, asking for help because they've run on hard times. But this is the natural effect of purity, pure water poured into pure water. Ya takam shude shudama shiktam tadrageva bhavati. Evam mudir vijanata atma bhavati gautama. Pure water pours into pure water becomes the same. And just like that, so does the consciousness of the devotee poured into the consciousness of the deity becomes the same. See? So you wouldn't use unclean water in the worship. You see, it's pure water from a kosha poured into another kosha of pure water, like ganges water into that, to purify it. So the whole thing's about purity, and you're sitting there in purity, and you're imbibing purity. You do enough of that, and then you walk into the shrine one day and go into samadhi by seeing garlands of flowers. You've been introduced to that guna. Almost no gunas by that time. Mahashakti is almost beyond gunas. Gunatita, it's called. So it is pure. I guess I explained that well enough. Useful for liberation, whereas down in the mixed sattva, probably not yet. It's still a purification process. So it is pure, and mumuksha, it can be used for liberation. It's the best use for pure sattva, is to go the distance with it. Then it reflects the Atman. Yatriyatman bimbaha is the Sanskrit by Shankara. And it emanates light. I mean, these are all beautiful things, right? I mean, if you could think really quickly of 3 or 4 things that's in your mind about Brahman. Oh, it's full of light, it's got peace and bliss, it's pure, it's indivisible, things like that would come up. So this is what the seers are telling us, is the constituency, or the elements of pure sattva. Now, we've done it. We did that whole fencing sword chart. Let's look to fill out our knowledge on the Shaktis here real quick. Let's look at this chart, because it's also a fairly quick study. Maya's influence towards freedom. So here you want to know that, as Sri Ramakrishna put it, Maya is like the skin of the mango, and it protects the fruit while it gets ripe, but then it's discarded and no one eats it. So that's one way of giving some new information on Maya to people who maybe are afraid of it or think it's a sentient principle that's out to get them, kind of thing. So Sri Ramakrishna gave these kinds of teachings on Maya. And of course, the mind that's in a higher guna is going to see that teaching in that way. It's not going to occur naturally to people in a rajasic or tamasic state. One's too restless and the other's too dull. So it's just so necessary for us aspirants or practitioners to recognize that. You will not be able to get anywhere with a restless or dull mind. And I will just put it that, why are you even in spiritual life if you have that kind of mind? You're not going anywhere. Let's take your mind and let's put it up here. And let's put it up here even if you're not ready for it. Because that's your true state. It's leaning more toward your true state. Now think about those same things you've been hearing in the scriptures and have never been comprehending and have never been making headway in. Just take your mind and give it a mind lift. Forget about your big nose, or your cleft chin, or whatever it is you're cutting into with a scalpel. Forget the facelift. Do the mind lift. Because next time you look in the mirror with a pure mind, you'll think you're the most beautiful thing in the three worlds. And you haven't even touched your face yet with makeup or jewels or anything. See? You'll see everything radiating that light of Brahman, because it is pure light, right? It's bhati. Asti bhati priya. Before Satchidananda, there was asta bhati priya. It was the earliest version of Satchidananda. So they've been thinking about this way for a long time, in other words. So here's how it's put in a quote. Maya is an insentient force that, though invested with inherent powers of obscuration and distortion, which we have been looking at, nevertheless is present to drive beings towards remembrance and enlightenment. The tantric adepts state that she covers our eyes with one hand, but leads us toward freedom with the other. This directive power is Prakasha Shakti. Prakasha is the revealing light. Prakashaka is its revealer, and Prakashya is the thing revealed. That you'll find out permutations of those Sanskrit words, and there's even a few pratibhasaka and a few other words that go with that too. It's a very powerful word in Sanskrit, and they've taken it in all those permutations in order to introduce people to this revelatory power. This is everything. Yes, it's leaning more towards sentiency, but it doesn't need to be fully aware. It doesn't need to be sentient to reveal itself. You're the sentient principle. You need to see the revelatory power in the object, what it's really saying. Like, what is the tree really saying to you? What's the ocean with waves and without waves telling you? It's not like, oh, there's some superstitious ghost out there that's making things change. Like Swamiji said, you throw an object up, you think, oh, it's gone. And then it falls next to you. You think there's a ghost up there that threw it back at you. You see? So people are that superimposing, ridiculous things over natural processes. And it's just gravity. And gravity, too, is going to be something that you're going to outgrow someday. Not only scientifically, when higher principles come along, but in your dreams, when you float, when you go to different worlds. And when you go into outer space, if you wish, on a rocket ship. So these kinds of things need to be brought out so that if you're talking about Mahashakti, yes, she's beyond Prakasha Shakti. That's why we put it this way. But the Prakasha Shakti itself is a natural revelatory force in everything. It's not going to be something to pray to, for instance. It'll be something to realize it's there and then lift yourself up with it. There's the three Maya Shaktis, they're called here. Avarana Shakti, power of obscuration, veils the mind on individual, collective, and cosmic levels. So there's a variety, a kind of Avarana Shakti that's gross, subtle, and causal on all those levels. You might say it's even there when Lord Brahma is convinced by the Shakti herself, time to start the next cycle. Can't I just sleep? Do I have to do this all again? How many billions of times has this gone on? And so forth, you see. But so there's always a power of obscuration there. That, oh yeah, that causes him to think, oh yeah, it's time to do that again. So let's think it out again. Let's brood, swell with joy, and the whole thing will happen again. Billions of souls will, come back and forth along this cosmic line. And then we'll get to see the collective level, what the quality of those people, those beings are in this cycle. And when it gets down to the individual level, we'll get to see which ones are going to get liberated and which ones are not. Very few are going to get liberated compared to the bulk of souls that get caught in these huge cycles of Maha Yugas are called. Talking just yesterday was a student about the old lady on the beach. She goes along, picks up certain things off the beach. Every morning she does this. Oh, there's some glass, it's been polished by the waves. There's some sea foam. There's some shell, bits of shell, I want that. So she'll fill her jar with this stuff, come home and pour it into a bigger jar in her beach cottage. She has a huge jar she's got. So she comes home with all of those pieces that she selected off of the beach with the ocean out there. And she pours all this into a huge jar. And that's the end of the story. You say, well, oh Master, Sri Ramakrishna, what's it mean? Is it just a story about an old lady on a beach? Well, no, that she's the Divine Mother Shakti. She's these Maha Shaktis walking along. She's selecting certain beings that are going to be used for her next Mahayuga, for the next cycle of creation. And those are millions of bits of souls that got thrown on the beach of relativity when a whole ocean of freedom was out there. Beings that never took a soul, took a birth in a body in ignorance. So we looked at the Hospital of the Worlds last week on that chart. Sri Ramakrishna is saying, why did you check yourself into that hospital in the first place? So we must have a choice in the matter, right? To be or not to be. How about to embody or not to embody? We must have a choice in the matter, because you can't not be. You're always in existence. But you can get caught in 5 sheaths, and you can also be free of those sheaths and never get caught in them. You can also slough them off once you're caught in them. So you have choices as a soul. So you can see there, it veils the mind on these levels. It related to the guna of tamas, Avarana Shakti is, and it works in conjunction with Vikshepa Shakti. Vikshepa Shakti then is the power of distortion. You've risen from tamas to rajas. Remember, this is the cosmic cycle. These are the gunas. These are your karmas. These are the 3 worlds. These are all sorts of the gunas working in every level of awareness. That's why they're such a crucial part of the philosophy in India. Should be taught in every school, worldwide. And nobody knows about them. This is the real education, is to understand these so that you can connect them with sentient and insentient principles. You can connect them with your birth, life, and death and rebirth. You can connect them with your 3 kinds of karma. You can connect them with rajas, tamas, and sattva, and your thoughts and so forth, and be free. It's called Adi Daiva Vidya, the original wisdom. Daiva means divine. It's the original divine wisdom that everyone, doesn't matter what religion, because the religions came later, when people decided, like Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad were somehow 4 religions. That wasn't the way it was envisioned from the cosmic mind. Jesus wasn't walking around saying, I'm a Christian now. I'm not a Jew anymore. So what happened? people did it. And whether, and good and bad came out of it, those kinds of lines of demarcation. So what can you do as part of the cosmic process? Well, you can look back at the Gunas and see how they influenced everything. And you can see what kind of powers are working in those. And you can go back to the Trinity and ask them, like the great soul in the Upanishad, he finally meditated on Lord Brahma and found him. Oh Lord, your worlds, they're amazing, they're miraculous. I wandered through them. See, can you release me from them now? I'm done with them. This is right there in the Upanishad. Great soul asked him to be let out of that whole Sankalpa of Lord Brahma. And get moksha, meet the Mahashakti, get released from that forevermore. Even if I get back into it again, I'm not into it in the same old way as I was. Because I come in with the knowledge of it being a play, a projection from the great mind, and I'm always worshiping the great mind, and I'm always having my intelligence intact, and I'm always having my devotion there, and I'm always having a desire to be free, whether I'm embodied or not, or disembodied, or in the process of either, the bardos. This is the Dharma, the Swadharma that I carry with me. So, otherwise distorts the mind on all three levels. Yeah, that is, there's a distortion in all three levels of all three worlds. It's related to the Gunas of Rajas, because one plays into the other in their own cycle, and it works in conjunction with both Avarana Shakti in the tamasic realm and Prakasha Shakti in the sattvic realm. It's a natural medium for them. So beings in Rajas would be good to beat a swift retreat from tamas and storm the gates of Saatva. See? Once they have Rajas, that's what I can use it for. See, I've got the power now. What, another revolution? You lose the power and you get it back? No, we're not going to politics here. That's going to go on over and over and over again forever. We're talking about the revolution of realization and the revolution of renunciation, the revolution of following the radiant road to realization. Those kinds of things we want to use Rajas energy for, to arrive at our penultimate goal, which should be peace of mind and deeper, so that I can see God face to face. That's why Mahatma Gandhi said that. When we see Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, we see God face to face, Gandhi said. So you want to, even in this world, you want to have your sights set, your aim perfected on that goal of Ishvara, realizing Ishvara, because that's beyond the Trinity. See, Ishvara is beyond the Trinity. So Prakasha Shakti then clarifies the mind by revealing the actual nature of things, which I just tried to explain a few minutes ago. It's in everything if you have the mind to see it. If you don't, it's not there. Enough said that people who don't see it, who don't believe in God, who think nature is just insentient objects to use or to misuse, and then all of a sudden the person is like, I think I'll deify that. See, I think I'll worship that. It's divine. It's all divine. See? Renunciation is not condemnation, my teacher said. It's deification. So what's the dynamic and what are the ingredients? What had to go away and what had to be taken on in order for me to reach that pure sattvic state, where Rajas then turned from white to pink, from red to pink to white, and coursed me along my way to the goal of human existence. So Prakasha Shakti, as Shankara has told us, is related to the guna of Saatva, and importantly leads beyond it as well. This is why Swami Triguna Titananda was one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And what would you like as your sannyas name? Well, I've read about the Gunas and Shankara and so forth. I think I want to be named Trigunatita, Nanda. I think I want the bliss of being beyond the three gunas. Really couldn't go wrong with a name like that once realized, because you'd be at least at the Mahashakti level, or at least at pure Saatva, where everything is revealed. The secrets of everything are revealed. Even of nature, if you want to go shamanistic with it. I mean, the whole thing is just open book to you. Otherwise, why do they walk around with their eyes wide open? Like Annapurna Upanishad, she revealed to me with her eyes wide open, her huge eyes wide open, looking at me. And he asked me a boon. So there, this is my addition, because I thought it was bring the Vedanta to it all. Is there you see Adyaropa and Apavada under the auspice of Prakasha Shakti. Adyaropa, the ability of the spiritual aspirant to adroitly detect the unreal false superimposition of name and form over Brahman. Who would have suspected before that? Before Prakasha Shakti visited you, or you found her, who would have suspected that name and form was actually a covering over truth? Nobody thought that way except India. They ran to embrace nature. And other names and forms too that were aggregates and aberrations. Nice combination of words there. It's an aggregate or an evolute, and it's also an aberration of the original. It's distortion. It got taken over by Vikshepa Shakti, coming right out of that ragged prana, ragged thinking, ragged health. Apavada then is the ability of spiritual aspirant to, via rejection of the unreal, do away with false superimposition of name and form over Brahman. So that you would want to do. In other words, then, to use advanced Vedantic tools that we've been speaking about, like Viveka, Vairagya, Adyaropa, Apavada, Vivarta, and so forth, to use those, then you're going to have to get your mind up to that level that Prakasha Shakti is working in it. It won't happen otherwise. You can long for it, hope for it, and take the slow boat to it if you want to be that kind to it. But there is a quick way of just acknowledging her in everything, and then availing yourself of that immediate insight that comes from her, as if she was just there in everything all the time and just waiting for you to detect her, like a hide and seek kind of game. You see, peeks out behind a tree. What was that? You see, go search behind the tree, under the rock, in the sky. You can go from the tips of the Himalayas and the Caucasus down to the bottom of the ocean, Swami Vivekananda said, but you'll never get enlightenment till you see her. Find a guru that teaches about her. And Sri Ramakrishna did that too. He says, once I entered the woods, I was sitting in meditation in the pine grove when suddenly I had a vision in the form of something like a chamber door in the ground. I couldn't see inside, so I tried to bore a hole in the door with a nail knife. But as I dug, the earth kept falling into the hole and filling it. Then suddenly I made a very big opening. End of story. It's like, that's about the time as you're like, what was it? What was it? And then you fall off your chair, and he leaves you hanging. So the revelatory power, he saw through it. He pushed it, pushed the envelope. And even when things were getting, were still trying to be covered by dirt and earth filling it in. That's the business of Vikshepa Shakti, to distort, you see, to hide, avarana. And all of a sudden he kept pushing, then the revelatory power kicked in and he made a great opening. and had samadhi. These are very secret experiences. I don't tell these to very many people, he said. The chapter in the Gospel that's titled that, about his experiences, his spiritual experiences. He was waiting for all the devotees to come, the true devotees to come, so he could relate these to them. I was thinking that this Vedantic equivalent to this kind of story of Sri Ramakrishna's comes from Shankara there. Espying a snake one evening in the semi-darkness, a man reacted in abject fear. Upon closer inspection, he saw that the illusory snake was really a rope. Similarly, a man sees a universe where only Brahman exists. The power of obscuration, avarana, causes his mind to cover reality with the world. The power of distortion, vikshepa, makes him perceive the world as distinct from Brahman. Period. So that's one of the 5 kinds of delusion in the Annapurna Upanishad I came upon yesterday, or day before. That's one of the primal delusions, is to think that the world has a separate reality apart from Brahman. It's number 4, I think. We'll look at that in a few weeks. The power of distortion, vikshepa, then makes you perceive the world as distinct from Brahman when it isn't. But the penetrating power of prakasha reveals all such superimpositions and projections to be unreal. So that, by taking the rope and the snake analogy, famous in Vedanta, you see the Sanskrit there in it, and that Shankara brings out as one of these a number of them, abhava padarthas, I think they're called, where, like, you look at a shell and you think there's silver in it. You think there's such a thing as a horned hare. There's different ways in which they try and express it. Man in a stump, manus, means that you're, and I've had that experience myself, walking late at night and looking in the field, and there's a stump in the semi-moonlight, and it looks like it's moving, my eyes, and I think there's a man over there in that field, I'm all alone, nobody around for miles. Man in the stump, manus, stanus manusha, I think it's called in Sanskrit. We have one in Hawaii too here, I like to mention once in a while. It's called those sailors that came over with Captain Cook when they saw Oahu, they saw Diamond Head, they saw the obsidian up there and Diamond Head glittering in the sun. They thought it was gold. So they came running. They were here for gold, right? So they came running to Oahu and went up there and found out it was just shiny lava, basically. So that's a natural abhava padartha in Hawaii that people fell victim to when they came here. So, mother of pearl in a shell, man in a stump, diamonds in lava. Those are all snake in a rope. Ways they've thought of to get us away from this, taking the world to be the only reality. You could say then, and the Annapurna Upanishad does state that, if you were to see it connected to Brahman, if you'd see all those connections, then you could say the world was real. And Maya even has its time, its day in the sun, because, like we say, it protects everyone like the skin of a mango, and then peel it and throw it away when it's of no use anymore. So when it's of no use anymore is when you can see the Prakasha Shakti and put her on your side, and everything becomes to be a revolution to you. It's sort of like a baby, getting back the power of its senses. It can actually see better now, and it's in wonder at that, whatchamacallit, up there. Yeah, mobile on the ceiling. The wind's blowing it. It's just like in wonder, So as we grow up, souls who are still immature or green grow up, then if you're following that tract of thinking, of higher thinking, and you have parents and guru who are leading you along that track, then everything should become more and more amazing. It should put you in wonderment, like seeing a flower garland around a statue and just go into samadhi with it. Which means that you wouldn't suffer the fate of people who are getting jaded, you see, because so many times they've run along the tamasic, rajasic wheel of desire and never gotten satiated by it. And they still keep on doing it. Why give people dirty ditch water to drink when the river of Amrit is flowing in them, inside of them, right next to them? It should be about showing people that revelatory power. You could look at it that way, but look at it this way and become very adept at doing that. Skillful means, it's called in Buddhism. Become very good at not trying to argue with people or convince them otherwise, or take them from a place that they're not ready to give up, to a place that they're not ready to be in. But just say, you could look at it this way, and that's the revelatory power in everything. And use that skillful means and let them think about it for a while. And then they'll waken up by themselves. Because she does tend to wake us up, like I was thinking here. Sarva Jnana Shakti Maha Kundalini Jivatman Paramatmadharini Shri Devi Rudrani Kalaratri Devi Vijaya Vijaya Shakti Vasundari Shri Yoga Mai Chit Shakti Devi Jaya Vijaya Devi Vasundari Shri Mantra Shakti Mata Deva Devi Dasa Tattva Devi Shakti Dharini Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam. Oh, Progenitress of all penetrating wisdom, who flows imperceptibly as subtle spiritual current within the human body, you hold all souls and absolute reality within you, though often terrible to behold, great lady, appearing as the black night of incomprehensible voidness. You hold knowledge and ignorance in abeyance and loose them for your purposes. O all-attracting presence, O all-alluring and puissant form, you animate the 5 elements and exude sublime intelligence as well. You are ever victorious over all beings. O goddess of all the gods, who embodies his comprehension in all the great scriptures, you operate all cosmic principles, the Gunas, and grant communion with divine nature. Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam. A good way to end our first half, a few minutes early, but we're at a good breaking spot. We'll come back and look at some of the beautiful evidences of purity that Holy Mother found out when she looked deeply into the nature of the Gunas in the universe and also take a peek at pure Saatva, how the dynamics of that take us toward the Maha Shakti from Prakasha Shakti. Here we will take our break then.